Alright, peace to you, man. How are you? I just want to let you know, guys, that I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Now, of course, I'm joking with you. I'm pulling your legs. I'm very religious. All of mankind is religious. But I want to analyze that statement and what that means, because I've heard this over and over, time and time again in my life. Many, many times from usually young people, I hear this term or this phrase, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. When I ask people about what their doctrinal inclinations are, what do they believe in, what do they stand for, what do they live their life for, they'll tell me they're religious and not, they're not religious, but they're spiritual. And what does this mean? Because really, what my mind does is I try, because people cap, okay? People lie all the time. People talk a whole lot of nonsense. People, they'll lie to themselves in front of your face. And I like to, what I do is I try to program my brain and I try to wire my brain to come to the fundamental truth of a matter. When somebody says one thing, what does that actually mean? What are they really trying to say? And what does this mean? I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. What that means is I don't want to hold myself accountable to any tradition or any way of life. I want no accountability, and I want to do what I want with my life. That's what that really means. That's what that really means. Because I've been thinking about this. You know, I just watched a video of Sam, and it's such an excellent video. He's reading out of a book of Julius Evola, and he talks about the difference between modern quote-unquote spirituality and true righteousness, true religion, as it were, true faith, true transcendental philosophies, the true ways of life that man really, God has given us one true way of life, but the delusion of modern spirituality as opposed to traditional ways of life. And man, that video really, it hit hard. It was so true. It's so true, and I recommend all of you guys watch it. It's because it really, I've been thinking about this for a while, and this is what I had this topic on the back burner in my mind, and this is what finally caused me to want to pull the trigger and make this video. And I'm going to talk about modern spirituality and what that means. And what it means is I don't want to be held accountable to any tradition. And I've been thinking about it. I just thought to myself, like, for a while, how come whenever I listen to somebody tell me, whether they're a Sunni, Hadithan, Muslim, whether they're an Orthodox Christian, when somebody tells me these things, oh, I'm an Orthodox, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Sunni, why have I always, even if I disagree with the statements of these religions or these belief systems, of course the Quran makes it very clear that if you ascribe a partnership to God and you die in that state, you go to hell forever. And based on my understanding, Orthodox and Catholics and most Christians, they do ascribe a partnership. They say that God is a third of three, and those who say that God is a third of three have denied, according to the Quran. But it's not, I'm not analyzing it in that way, on that level. But there is a degree, despite the disagreement, there is a degree of respect I get in my mind when I think of anybody who has told me that they're a Catholic, they're a Muslim, they're a Shia, they're a Sunni, they're this, they're that, they're an Orthodox. Why has that given me respect for the person? Just a little bit, at least, as much as I may disagree with them. Because what the person is basically telling me, the foundations of this statement is I belong to a group of people. I belong to a tradition and a way of life. You can hold me accountable to certain principles, and that's key, ladies and gentlemen. You can hold me accountable to certain principles. I can go, if somebody tells me they're an Orthodox Christian, I can go to the Orthodox Church, I can look into the Orthodox Church, I can read their beliefs and see their way of life, and if somebody is deviating away from that, I can hold them accountable to that way of life. I can say, hey, bro, you're being a hypocrite. Look at what your religion or what you follow says. You're doing something completely different. I can do the same thing with the Hadithan. That's why I can approach him with the Quran, and I can show him the true way of following the Quran is to follow it alone, because he belongs to a tradition. He belongs to a way of life. I can hold him accountable to something. He has a standard. Whether he follows it or not is a separate issue, but he has a standard he claims to hold, and I can hold him accountable to it. And that is a very masculine and based way of life. That's a very based way of thinking. Modern spirituality, quote-unquote spirituality, there's no standard. You just do what you want, you follow your emotions, you follow your feelings, and you're led about with every wind of passion. Like, when you tell me, if some guy comes to me and says, oh, if I ask him, what do you follow? What's your way of life? And he says to me, oh yeah, man, I'm not really religious, I'm more spiritual. What do I hold him accountable to? What standard is there? There's nothing. He just does what he wants. All this stuff it's the abnegation and the dodging of responsibility. Even us, we have a tradition. We follow after the Quran, and I would say that, according to the Quranic narrative, we have the oldest tradition, those who follow the Quran alone, and of course we acknowledge the previous scriptures as well. We have the oldest tradition because we follow the first religion that was given to Adam, and all this other stuff of the hadith and all of that, that's a deviation. We follow the pre-hadithan, the pre-man-made inventions, the scriptural way of life, which was the first way of life given to Adam. We belong to a historical tradition. And that's another thing that so many moderns, because they haven't studied, they haven't looked into things, they haven't thought of things so deeply and thoroughly, that they forget, is that history is important. History is important. And I absolutely, to a certain extent, do agree with the arguments that the Orthodox Church give and the Catholic Church give. They talk, some of the talking points that they give to the Protestants is they say, your church has no really, some of them kind of do, like the Lutherans, but a lot of these Baptisty, the United Church, the Friends Church, these kind of new churches that just, popped up out of nowhere in the last couple hundred years. These guys, they have no, like these Protestant churches are completely shattered and fragmented. I can go and open up a Protestant church right now. I can't open up a Catholic church. I can't open up an Orthodox church. I have to be held accountable to the traditions of that group. And they correctly, the Catholic and the Orthodox, they point out that the Protestants have no history. And history is important. It is important because what does history show? What is the essence of the argument that these Orthodox and these Catholics are making against these Protestants? And what is the argument that I'm making against these modern quote-unquote spiritualists? If you can't point to where your ideas were followed in history, if you can't give me a basis or a root for your ideology, you're basically telling me your ideas have never worked in the history of mankind. I can show you where not my ideas, the ideas that I follow, that I hold myself accountable to, the Quranic ideas, where they've worked. And they've worked since the beginning. They've worked with Adam, the first man, and they've worked for all the prophets, and they've worked for the early companions, the people who follow the prophets. I can point to a history. I can show you that my ideology has worked. It has history. I'm not some new kid on the block. I'm not a spur just talking out of my rear end. I have a tradition that I hold myself accountable to. But the modern spiritualists, they can't do that. And whether they know it or not, the adherents to these modern quote-unquote spiritualist movements, they essentially believe that the entire history of mankind has always been wrong about everything. All these religions, all these groups, they're all just wrong, and everybody's made mistakes. And I'm the only one who's right. I'm the first person ever, because you can't point to anybody who believes the same things as you. You can't point to any historical tradition that you adhere yourself to. So I'm the only one. I'm the first person who's gotten things right in the history of mankind. I'm smarter than the rest of the world. That's essentially what it boils down to, whether they know it or not. It is inherently inhumanistic. It's inherently enlightenment. It has that enlightenment kind of mentality. This golden age that we're going to progress into this age of reason kind of thing. It's utopian, these ideologies. With history and with root comes authority. Like, I can say this to you guys, and a lot of people, they'll take it as egotistical, but if you listen to what I'm saying, then you'll understand from where I'm coming. When I speak to you guys in my videos, I speak to you with authority. When Sam speaks to you, he speaks to you with authority. And if you're on the tremendous tradition, if you follow the Quran, you speak with authority as well. Why? People, they're not going to analyze a statement, most, but some will. But the reason why I speak to you guys with authority, it's not derived from myself. My authority doesn't come from me. My authority comes from that which came before me, those who came before me, that which was established before little Walid or any other person. When I have aligned myself to a time-tested and true system, I have aligned myself. I have the weight of the past and the ancient world behind me when I speak. When I talk, not out of my own fancy, but out of the Quran, I have the weight of the past with me because this stuff has worked. And this gives you a level of authority when you follow that, way of life, when you have a system that you hold yourself accountable to. It gives you a level of authority that the spiritualist can never have. Even Muhammad himself, he didn't speak from his own authority. He consistently said, he said in the Quran, that was part of the message he gave people. I am nothing new among the messengers. I'm not bringing to you anything new. I'm just like the prophets of old who came, Moses and Jesus and Abraham and all these people. I am following after their tradition. The same God that spoke to them is speaking to me. The same God that gave them revelation is giving me revelation. His authority was not derived from himself. He was not exacerbating his own ego. Not at all. He was coming and following upon a tradition. His authority also came from that which was established before him. And whether you're the atheist, whether you're the modern spiritualist, and there's a lot of similarities between the two. Both of them, they don't hold themselves accountable to any real belief system. They don't have any moral ethics or codes, and they cap. That's all they do. They lie. So that's why even though if I disagree with any particular religion on their belief system, if somebody adheres themselves to a group, at least I know them. I know you. You wear your heart on your sleeve and you have an identity. You belong to a group of people. You have a historical tradition, and it's very important. Your ideology has to have history. And moderns don't understand that one. We don't. And that is why New Age, modern quote-unquote spirituality is utterly degenerate. It's completely failed. I haven't seen it produce any fruit that's worthwhile. I'm not impressed by the people who adhere to it. Everybody talks wisdom. I've talked to some of the most disgusting, degenerate people who say that they're not religious, but they're spiritual. Like people who are doing sodomy on the down low, people who just spend their days smoking weed and meditating and getting high and trying to get into this trance state or whatever. I've talked to these people, and when I try to warn them and tell them of the message of God, the true way of life, the one way of life, the scriptural way of life, the worship of one God, and the true nature of God, and what we are supposed to do, and the moral boundaries that God has put in place, they'll always tell me I'm too judgmental, I need to become more open-minded, and I need to become more wise, I need to get on their level. But whenever I check out these modern spiritualist people, I'm not particularly impressed by their way of life. Not at all. I don't see any discipline. I don't see any morality. I don't see any intelligence. I don't see any hard work or work ethic. I just see very effeminate, emotional men going from thing to thing to thing without any commitment, just wasting their life, burning their life, and trying to escape from life as well. That's what the whole, a lot of these guys, they get high, they do the DMT, the shrooms. It's escapism. It's to escape from the problems of the world, as opposed to dealing with the problems of the world with faith in the Most High, like a man should. And that is what the Quran and the scriptures teach us, to not run from the problems of this world, but to face the problems of this world. I don't see that with these guys. So modern spirituality is vain, it's empty, it's fatuous, it's produced no real fruits. And really, now I want you to keep that in your mind, ladies and gentlemen. If anybody comes to you and says those words, that when you ask them, what do you follow? What do you hold to? I'm not really religious, I'm spiritual. I want your mind to translate that right away to, I don't want to be held accountable to any standards, because that's what that really means. But anyways, men, that's really all I got to say on the matter. I hope this talk was a blessing. And yeah, peace to you. Remember, deceit abounds, so keep your eyes wide open. Peace out.
Assalamu alaikum, men. My name is Waleed Naeem, and I have dedicated my entire life towards spreading the truth about the words of God. And I don't know about you, but personally, I have grown sick and tired of all these mainstream religions, and specifically the mosques, which have utterly failed us. I'm fed up with them placing the words of man, specifically their fabricated hadiths, at a higher authority than God's holy scriptures, their lack of knowledge about conspiracy facts and realpolitik, and their complete ignorance of the true nature of our earth. I've had enough of their compromise, their weakness, their lame sermons which put people to sleep, their virtue signaling, their fear of facing any real persecution, and their willingness to let the quote-unquote secular atheist utterly trample over them. The atheists own all of the educational boards and teach their propaganda to every so-called Muslim and quote-unquote non-Muslim child here in the West. And now with the Toyota Corolla hoax, the atheist has successfully broken apart our communities and made us utter slaves to their government. Our so-called quote-unquote Muslim sons are a bunch of wannabe hood rat gangsters who vape, drink, smoke weed, and party like animals. And our so-called quote-unquote Muslim daughters are not much different. They have no interest in hearing about the Word of God. They are all too busy YOLOing. This has all happened while the Imams have been living very comfortably off of the hard-earned money of their community members in the donation bins. As stated before, I personally am completely fed up with this. The mosques have had all of the support, funding, enfranchisement, and time of our communities and have produced absolutely nothing. The atheist has made the so-called quote-unquote Muslim man his bitch. He has steamrolled him in every way possible. That is why I created Eyes Wide Open. This channel exists as a call to action for all of those strong believing men who trust in their Lord fully and refuse to compromise the Quran. It is time the true sons of Adam and the inheritors of the tremendous tradition, in other words, the true Quranic Muslims, to set up something for themselves and fearlessly stand up against the madness that is going on in the world. What you see with my channel right now is only the beginning. These short videos I make in my car are all that I have time for right now, working a full-time job. I scribble these together while at work and make these videos while running errands. But you ain't seen nothing yet. If God should will, I have so much more in store for Eyes Wide Open. I want this to be a platform for the believers. Just a couple of things I have planned for this channel is, firstly, creating scholarly books, documentaries, and essays to arm you guys with the intellectual firepower for dealing with all of our enemies. Secondly, I would like Eyes Wide Open to be a center for heavy activism, public and street preaching, going to City Hall, organizing protests, knocking doors, going to baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, and other major sporting events and preaching to the people leaving the stadium, going to the totally failed mosques, synagogues, and churches and debating with their religious leaders, going to universities and debating the quote-unquote secular professors on their laughable so-called science, and much more. It's time the believers start to fight back and shake the cage of this disgusting system. My goal is to create a base for the believers. I want people to know of our name, that there are dedicated, zealous, and studious men who do not compromise the Word of God, and we are ready to take action. If we keep waiting for our mosque to do something about the real problems of this world, then we will be waiting until Judgment Day. We need to create something now from the ground up. With that being said, may God bless us in all of our endeavors and guide us every step of the way. If this sounds like something you are interested in, and if you want to be a part of the movement, then you can help me out. My Patreon and PayPal are linked in the description of every video, and, God willing, if enough generous believers decide to fund this platform, then I can quit my full-time job and look for something part-time, or, even better than that, leave employment completely, which will give me more hours in the day to do this work. I do not care to be rich. All of that stuff is vanity anyways. But the fact of the matter is, my wife and I need to eat and have a roof over our heads. So, if you wish to support the cause, then I thank you sincerely for that and promise to fight with might and main in the cause of God for the believers. If you are not able to, hey, then I totally understand. Find somebody else who needs that money and give it to them. Give it out of fear of your Lord and in dread of that great and terrible day, which is coming to all of us. For all of the believers out there, the brothers and sisters who follow hard upon the truth, all I can say is much love to each and every one of you. May God reward you in this life and the hereafter. Praise goes to God alone. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace.